Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV. My co-host is honeymooning in Jamaica right now. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm battening down the hatches with a very special guest. Mr. Javier Ramiro. What's happening with you, man?
I'm not honeymooning in Jamaica, honeymooning in South Central.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, man. Jeremy's out there. You know what I'm saying? He was gonna try to tap in, but he said the internet connection, he said he just couldn't. He didn't want to,
Keeps cutting out.
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? But are you really supposed to have strong internet connection when you honeymoon?
Honeymoon? No. I think that's like newly marriage club rule number one. Shut the phone down, right?
That could be his creative mind because he's a writer too. You know what I'm saying? That could be his creative mind coming up with something that sounds kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I'm just messing with it. So what's up, man, Javier? So what city are you from?
I am originally from La Ciudad, or a small town actually, in the Sierra of Puebla, about 4 to 5 hours south of Mexico City is where I was formed, created by the beloved Mexican gods.
That's right. That's right. So where did you grow up?
All over, man. Started off my American journey in San Diego, California, East San Diego, to be clear, not the beach, on the east side, Valencia Park, Encanto, east side San Diego. Went to Lincoln Prep High School, where Terrell Davis and Marcus Allen used to run free. And I went to a little small school for academics called Gompers. So I spent some years in San Diego and then ran away to Boston and, learned a lot about, film and art, and it led me to LA.
Spinning the record back to Mexico, I got an interesting little tale about Mexico.
Tell us.
So my other thing is I have a printing company, and so one of my vendors, I had to turn something around for a client, and UPS, I just didn't want to risk it on UPS, and they're a good client. So my vendor is in San Diego, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll get to San Diego by 11 or so. Then I will grab something to eat and then bounce back. I'll be back at the office by 1, and then I can hop into this job. So when I called, the vendor, he gave me the directions, every single thing. So I was like, cool. So punched it into my GPS. And so I'm driving. And so I get off the freeway and I drive to this kind of like industrial area. It was funny because it was industrial, but there was a small residential section that was kind of parallel to the industrial part. So I'm looking at my GPS as I'm driving, and so I reach a stop sign. And so I stopped, and then I just continue across because I was kind of trying. It really didn't tell me to turn to the left, turn to the right, whatever. So I drive past the stop sign, and 3 minutes later, there's just like this. I'm just driving around a whole bunch of brown, like a whole bunch of brown. And so I said, you know what? Let me bust a U-turn. So you can't make a U-turn. It's kind of like an industrial alley, but you couldn't bust a U-turn. So I was in there 3 minutes from the stop sign. So then 5 minutes after that, I pull up and there's like meat lockers everywhere. And there's trucks. There's trucks like kind of backed up to these kind of like meat locker things. And guess where I was?
Tell me.
In Mexico.
Ah, cabrón. Now I get it. A lot of brown.
At the border. But the funny thing, I didn't turn, I guess I was supposed to turn right, and I just kept going straight, and I came in the industrial entrance to the border. So
were you in Otay?
You said, was I where?
Otay Mesa?
Man, I got off the freeway. There was nothing that said border, nothing. I was going to San Diego, and the goal was to hit my vendor, be there for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm looking around, and there's these guys that are kind of like in army colored fatigues, but not necessarily army fatigues. Yeah. And so I said, I didn't exactly understand I was at the border. At that point, I thought that I had just driven into like an industrial trade type of situation. Yeah, so one of the guys in the camouflage, it was fatigue colored. It was like the olive green and all that kind of stuff. He started walking over towards me. So I'm like, I don't know where I'm at, but I said, I tried to show him my phone. I said, my GPS, it said that I was 5 minutes from my destination 5 minutes ago, but now it's saying I'm an hour away from my destination. And I'm like, how, whatever. And so he's kind of trying to talk to me, but he's speaking Spanish, but he's kind of getting arrogant with me. And I'm not getting it. Like I don't understand that I'm in Mexico. Like he's kind of getting arrogant with me. And then I look closer at him, and he had a machine gun around his shoulder. He had a strap. Well, it was a strap around his shoulder, but I wasn't thinking machine gun, border, none of that. So then he said, can I see your registration and your insurance? And so I was like, here's my registration and insurance, but I'm just trying to get back. Like I was just 5 minutes, so he's not feeling none of it, like none of it. So then he calls one of his homeboys, and his English is kind of like shoddy. But you know what? Me thinking about it right now, he was messing with. I mean, his English might not have been that well, but I think he was trying to run the business on me. But peep this. Out of nowhere, a Filipino cat comes on a golf cart, and he just kind of intercepted. He came in, and he was American Customs. And he was like, yo, I got it. I'll take it from here. So the Filipino cat, he said, follow me over here to this parking space. So I was like, okay. So go over to the parking space. And he said, yeah, man, you're in Mexico. And I was like, but there was no signs. There was no nothing. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're in the industrial, like the trade exit. And so I was just like, dang. And he said, well, you know what? Have a seat on the bench, and I'll be back in a minute. And if everything comes back cool, then you'll be on your way. So I was just like, dang. First thing I did, I called my father. I was like, man,
get my birth certificate ready.
I was like, I think I messed up, man. I don't know. They're not gonna search my car. At least it looks like they're not gonna search my car right now. I don't think I got anything way out in it. But I'm like, man, I did not plan on being in Mexico, but just so you know, I'm in Mexico. Woo, woo, woo. So then homeboy comes out 10 minutes later, and he says, you know what? I'll escort you to the entrance. And so he drove me like about 2 minutes from where I was, and there's a Mexican flag and an American flag. And then this gate opens up, this big, like everything is painted brown for some reason. But the gates were like maybe 15 feet high. So it wasn't like, you're not going to see over it or nothing like that. So it was just like a brown enclosure. So he hits this thing, and the big brown gate opens up for me to drive out. And when I drive out, I'm in a residential area. And I'm like, what kind of Batman entrance to Mexico did I end up in? So,
the two sides of the border couldn't be more different at times, right?
But the funny thing about it is, the Mexican cats were to the right, the American cats were to the left. They had a rapport with each other. They knew each other. It was almost like being on a football field and somebody saying, okay, that half is Mexico, this half is America. So I pull out, and when I pull out, I called my vendor, and I'm like, man, dude, you gave me the directions. And he's like, oh, you didn't make a right at the stop sign, huh? I was like, nah. He's like, oh, you're not the first. I was like, So, I belabored you with that strong tail, but you sell me my mezcal, so you know what I'm saying. You gonna hear a couple stories. We're gonna work that in.
You know what, man? I'm not gonna make you go down south of the border for it. I got it right here, man. I got it right here.
BC do. That's
You
right.
do. Yeah,
That's right.
it's been a minute. I think we spoke probably about a couple of years ago, right?
Yep, I came and I got my care package, man, that stretched me out. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. No,
saying?
it's been a minute. So much has happened, man. So much has happened. You know, we've finally got our act together, and we've started importing. We now, you know, if you get thirsty later, you can go to Silver Lake. For some reason, the Silver Lake cats really like our stuff. We're at this place called Barkeeper, and it's a beautiful curated spirit store. They got our stuff. Now we're in downtown at Las Perlas. You can saddle up to a nice booth and enjoy our mezcal at Las Perlas. If you want to go to Silver Lake, cool little loungy place. It's called Cha-Cha Lounge. We're there. My one of my other favorites is if you want to go to the west side, there's this cool little place called Bell's Lounge, Bell's Beach House, right on the boardwalk, man. And they got our stuff. As a matter of fact, this Saturday, next Tuesday, we're having a pairing with a really cool chef named Sydney Hunter. So he's going to put together 4 different dishes and pair them with 4 of our mezcales, really trying to become innovative. You know, this world of mezcal has grown a lot. It's a massive industry now, man. And the US has officially become the biggest drunk of mezcal. You know,
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
we're drinking it, man. We're drinking it, and there's all kinds of good stuff out there.
I'll be honest with you. I cheated, but only cheated once. And I'm kind of forcing myself to drink it because I bought it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not
Bishidu.
the predecessor or the version that I had before the Bishidu is definitely very far from that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? What is it like when you taste something and you're like, what? This isn't it. What is it? What are those elements when you're like, there's a lot out there. When you go to those shelves, there's so much to choose from. But when your palate tastes it, what is it? Like, you know, you're a Scotch, whiskey, you drink all kinds of brandies. You know good liquor, man, a good IPA, whatever.
That's
like,
a fact. That's a
right?
fact. So
what is it when you know?
Well, first of all, because I tend to purchase really nice bottles of liquor, I said, you know what? I want to see what this $30 bottle is gonna do. You know what I'm saying? That was the first mistake. You know what I'm saying? That was a mistake. It might have been $40, but it was something around 30 or $40. But that was the first mistake. And I had a shot, and it's funny because your mezcal, it's probably like the second or third time I had tasted it. I was a tequila guy. I like XOs.
Yeah, I remember it took a while. You know, you were really working that palate. You're almost fighting, you know, what you knew versus what mezcal is, which happens to a lot of people that first begin. They're expecting tequila, and they only know 2 things: really bad tequila, right? The kind that they got to hold their nose, right? And then who knows what else, and then take down whatever to make you forget that taste. And then there's the people that buy really great tequila and it's smooth and it's nice, right? But it's very singular in taste because it only comes from one agave. Whereas mezcal, a really well-made mezcal, can be from up to 30 different agaves now. You know, from the north of Mexico to the south of Mexico, there's such a revolution. There's such a renaissance of mezcal production right now. So, you know, any major city you go to now, people are no longer just saying, hey, do you have an espadín, which is the most common in the market? Now they're asking for like a tepestate, which takes 30 years, 25, 30 years to grow. They're asking for a capón, which is a particular espadín that was cut when the quiote or the bloom was already out. So like the American public has become very, very versed in this beautiful new thing called mezcal, which has been around for hundreds of years in Mexico. But, you know, north of the border, it's taken on a life of its own. There's not a single bar in LA that doesn't have at least one bottle of mezcal.
So I bought this cheap bottle of mezcal, and it made me recognize something. So after I started drinking your mezcal, I kind of started preaching. At first, I was a snob. I keep it 1,000. I was a snob, And then I figured out what I liked. You know, I tried several of them and I figured out what I liked, and I would try to preach the gospel. And I just tell people, I'm like, oh man, you got to get up on this mezcal, you know what I'm saying? You know, da 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 da. Yeah. So what I would get back from people is that, you know, I don't like my liquor smoky. I don't, you know, da 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 da. I don't like my liquor smoky. Well, your mezcal, it has the smoky taste on the palate, but it's an attractive smokiness.
Yeah, now, I like to think that, you know, when you think about the complexity of alcohols, right? Mm-hmm. A really cheap industrial alcohol, whatever it might be, whether it's vodka or gin or whatever, right? Whenever it's cheap and industrial, you're going to get very singular elements, very singular expressions, right? Either, you know, overly alcohol forward, right? That'll, you know, immediately, you know, you're immediately repulsed by it unless you're just drinking it to get whatever. But the good alcohols, the good spirits, whatever they may be, a wine, a gin, a scotch, they're going to have complexity, you know, and it's going to start usually with, you know, the sweetness. To what extent is that complex? You know, is it floral? You know, does it have particular, I would say, you know, ripe fruit elements? Then you look at the earthiness, you know, how herbaceous is it? What kind of minerality does it have? And then you can go into the third part, which is body. You know, is it lactic? Does it have viscosity? Does it have that silky element that just fills your mouth with like something attractive that makes you want to hold on to it a little longer? And then at the end, a good mezcal will have, yes, the smokiness, but it's an echo. It's a very, very, very small hint of smoke, which shows the care that went into it. It wasn't overly roasted. It wasn't roasted en masse. It was actually made probably in a small batch. And the person making it was watching that fire, making sure you didn't run out of water, making sure that the pot, whether it was clay or copper or stainless steel, whatever it was, making sure that there was a balance between fire, water, and the pulp. And then you get what's a balanced mezcal, something that you're like, wow, man. On the first one, I tasted mangoes. And on the second one, I had roses. And on the third one, there's a little bit of that medicinal flavor. And then lastly, a little butterscotch, a little black spice. That is an experience, you know, rather than a reaction.
So, two things. One, tasting this bad mezcal made me appreciate that very long conversation that was probably to you what my story about Mexico was, because when I came to your house, I really just wanted to get my mezcal and beat it, and you were telling me about the different flavors, the taste, the earthiness, and da-da-da. And I'm just like, man, I'm just trying to get my sip, you know what I'm saying, bounce. I know he's trying to get technical with it, but I'm gonna tell you the funny thing. Tasting that horrible mezcal, that made me appreciate that conversation, and you having the patience to talk to me about the earthiness and the flavors and the hints, and you caring enough to ask me, like, because my thing to you was, you know, I like really good liquor, and you were kind of like, well, what do you like about it? Like what? And then we got into the conversation. You were like, well, what do you want to taste? Because I was just like, man, just give me a bottle. And it's funny, it's similar to a conversation I had with my life coach years ago. And before I kind of hopped into that, I was like, because we did business together too, aside from that. And I was like, man, I want to get my stuff together. Can you recommend a book? And he was like, well, what kind of book? And I was like, well, you know, I just want to get organized, and he's like, well, it's a little more complex than that. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, okay, I get it. Well, I felt the same way when I bought that bad mezcal, and I appreciated about the 45 minutes we spent in your living room talking about what I was purchasing and whatnot, and you caring enough to kind of point me in the right directions, to the point where, man, that mezcal that I got from you, I'll say the bottles just ran dry maybe 4 months ago. I had one at the office that was in the back, and Brown and I would have a little whenever there was a small celebratory moment, you know what I'm saying, we make a little light cocktail, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think that lesson holds true so much in like the world of gastronomy, right? Like if you're lucky enough to taste fine sashimi at the very initial aspect of your, introduction to sushi, you're lucky. But most of us probably tasted bad sushi initially. But that helped, right? Because now when you taste an amazing cut of fish, you're like, wow, well, that's some good food, right? It's like a bad tomato versus like a really homegrown heirloom tomato. Once you get that, there's no going back, But I think it's very beneficial for all of us. One thing I used to not do but think about doing is during these tastings that I've had, and I've had probably hundreds now, people would always say to me, man, why do you work so hard? Why don't you just bring a shitty bottle of mezcal? Exactly what you just said. Because I think that everybody's journey with liquor is different, right? Who we were when we were in our 20s and who we are in our 30s. And along the way, we learn to slow down maybe, right? And it takes a certain maturity of palate also so that you are ready to drink good alcohol. Because think about our first experience with beer. There's very few people that probably enjoy beer on their initial tasting. But over a period of time, you see them 20 minutes later and they're like, all right, I love a cider, or I love a hazy, a double IPA at 8.9, right? You're like, who are you? 7 years ago, you were drinking citrus, 2%, easy pilsners. So it's just a question of where you are in life. And I think with mezcal, it's the same thing. The introduction could be a sweet, bright, mellow mezcal. A year later from now, you're going to be asking for the really, pungent, floral, earthy, spiced mezcales, even maybe a pechuga.
Well, from the information I gave you, you pretty much hit it on the head with a couple of bottles that I got. They were right along on, because I just like, I like something that will stay on my palate but won't overwhelm me, and I can sip it. Like even I've probably had shots. Well, don't get me on here lying. I have had some nights and some evenings that were shot filled, but those are far few compared to me sipping and tasting. And your mezcal, what it reminded me of is a really high level sipping tequila. It's not a tequila, but I'm just saying a sipping spirit. We'll call it a sipping spirit.
The comparison is fair. I think every spirit out there offers that variety, right? An amazing gin, an amazing Scotch, the whiskeys, the bourbons. The good ones are the ones you pour in that nice little glass of yours, right? And you take your time, you put on your Erykah Badu album in the back, and you chill out, and it's meaningful. The experience encompasses aroma and all your senses, your auditory, your nose, your lips, obviously, and if possible, the comfort of a place that connects with that spirit. Spirits, the reason why I think we're so in love with spirits is they're more than just a mechanism to escape. I think often a good spirit is a mechanism by which we can connect with ourselves a little more. And I think mezcal is a perfect example of that. It's tradition, it's history. When you go back to mezcal, it's not something that, it's not what it's become. It comes from celebration, reunion. It comes from every aspect of Mexican culture. In Oaxaca, when someone's born, there's a little bottle of mezcal there. When someone dies, we put him to rest, there's some mezcal there. In every aspect of Mexican culture, we have our spirits. And in Oaxaca in particular, mezcal is like breath. It's an absolutely essential aspect of culture and heritage. And the way we make it, I think we try to pay homage. We try to be reverent to that tradition.
So I've been to either one or two, I can't remember, of your tastings. And I remember when we had the personal, I guess I had a personal tasting with you. It was interesting because I really wished your tastings came in like a a part A, part B, because it was like, okay, looking at the movie screen, you know, it was kind of at nighttime. And then there was some very refreshing cocktails that you made and everything. And all
you remember the cucumber?
Yeah, and the watermelon. Yeah. And but this is the thing. There was so much going on with that I really appreciated the one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? When I came and I was ready to make a small investment in some of what you do, the one-on-one was kind of like, it wasn't so broad and it was to the point, and you were able to like ask me questions as I said, okay, are you looking for the earthiness? Like you're kind of trying to guide me on this thing. And you know, I really walked away with more value from the one-on-one. And it's just whack that people aren't privileged. I guess like I'm privileged, where I got the one-on-one conversation. Don't get me wrong, the cocktails, the ambiance, the everything to your presentation was great, but it was just kind of like, okay, this is a lot of information. But being able to have the conversation with you, and you kind of like on the level of a shaman, you know, you're asking me questions and I'm interacting with you and you're letting me know and leading me in a direction, man. That was a wonderful experience. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, so I think about what I have in my hands right now. Like right here, I have a Bichidu Espadin, right? And then I have a Bichidu Pechuga. And then I have a Bichidu Amarillo Ancestral. You know, when you're a company like us, a small batch mezcal producer like us, and you, every single time that I walk into a meeting, you know, I don't make any assumptions about the person I'm meeting. So what I've learned is, you know, if you really want these people to care about what you're doing, your job is to educate. Your job is to ask questions. Your job is to care about the client, about what they like. Because I like to think that our mezcal offers this vast array of possible gastronomic sensory experiences. And our job is to guide people, you know? So if they leave thinking, I know more now about mezcal than I did yesterday, and I'm more curious, and it leads them hopefully to us or to trying and recognizing a bad mezcal, which comes back to us, then I've done my job. And if my clients, the bar managers, the owners, all these thousands of people I've come into contact with, if I can connect with them in a way that they remember, you know, then and the things that I represent and what my brand represents, then I think I'm doing a decent job of the reason why we set out to do this. And that's really to promote culture, to promote understanding, to promote a respect for farmers, to promote a sense of the livelihood for farmers in Oaxaca and all the mezcal makers, man, that bust their backs doing this. It's a lot of work, man. And, you know, I want to take that into account when I let people understand the process of making great mezcal. It's so much more than we could ever imagine. You know, it takes 5, 10, 15, even nature works in collaboration to make this mezcal. Just imagine waiting for a plant for 20 years so that we can make a bottle, you know, a plant. All the other spirits, you know, 1 year, half a year, wine, grain, potatoes, whatever it is. Every year you can have, you know, a harvest and make a new batch. With mezcal, you got to wait at least 5 years to be able to make a batch. I think that's kind of magical, man. Not to mention the medicinal aspects of the agave, the historical aspects of the agave, the mythological, the connection between Mexico and the agave, or the maguey as we call it there. You know, there's a story about, you know, every culture has a creation story. But I find it fascinating that in Mexico, we have a creation story that involves the very plant that makes mezcal, the agave. And I'll give it to you in a brief 2 minutes. Essentially, there's this, and I'm going to embellish a little bit, but there's, from the very beginning of time, there's always this battle of yin and yang, of light and darkness, right? And in our culture, there's this great god, Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god, right? And there was this darkness. And Quetzalcoatl was the ray of light. And he believed that his light was going to create all fauna and all flora and everything necessary so that mankind could flourish with beans and maize and all the medicinal aspects of life. Meanwhile, darkness had seen a different prophecy, one where mankind was not going to be the best possible species alive, right? So this energy wanted to eradicate with shadows, killing off flora and fauna. So there's this constant battle in the cosmos. In one of these, Quetzalcoatl becomes fatigued and goes into the deepest recesses and abysses of the universe. And in that sees this glistening light that looks first like a river glistening in the deep, then looks like a serpent, and then eventually realizes that it's kind of a braid. And it is a braid that looks like vines, like in a wild jungle. And as he gets closer and closer, it looks like tree branches. And if you can imagine this, there was 400 limbs, 400 limbs. And on those limbs, there was 400 breasts. Yes, breasts. And on those 400 breasts, there was 400 rabbits. And they were all suckling on these breasts. Those breasts and that milk represented all the human emotions of that time, the potential of humanity to feel life. So, of course, he falls in love with this great goddess named Mayahuel, who happens to be the goddess of fertility, who all along had believed in his view and his vision for mankind. And it helped him to create this beautiful thing called the earth. However, darkness would not have this romance happen, goes after them, and in one of those battles, lashes out and strikes, instead of him, her dead. And of course, in his grief, initially, he wants to, eradicate darkness, but instead recognizes that life cannot happen. You cannot have light without darkness. So they are actually forever entwined. He returns back and he finds the perfect land, Mexico. And in honor of Mayahuel, in honor of all that she represents, generosity, her nobility, her quiet work for mankind, he creates the most beautiful plant, one that will forever be entwined with Mexican culture. He creates the agave, the maguey.
Nice, nice. Well, I'll say this. After the personal tasting, I understand why you had those nice mixed drinks there. After I'm faded after about 3 minutes, 3 minutes in, 3 minutes in, and I'm like, okay, man, it's time to get this and beat it. I wasn't off the chain, right? Like, okay, but I understood why you just can't turn people loose with the drink. You gotta, have some. Cocktails, and you have to be in charge of pouring the cocktail and mixing just all that.
Yes.
Man, people go crazy, man.
People don't understand, because it's sweet, it's smooth, right? Like all great spirits. Most of the stuff that gets sent up north, it's at like 38, 40 alcohol proof, right? So you're looking at, maybe almost 80, right? Our stuff usually begins at 47 to 50. We're talking about 100 proof spirit. I don't care how you mix it, and that's going to eventually hit your bloodstream, right? And you are not going to be well unless you know how to drink it. The name of our mezcal is Bishidu. You know what that translates to? Like a small kiss. Every single sip should be like the smallest kisses, because otherwise it will take over. You have to respect this drink.
Well, I'll say after I'm probably about probably 7 bottles by now, vet, since the inception. one of them gifted to me on my birthday by high school homeboy Santana. Oh, I want to give a shout out. We got Omar Visak. He's in the chat saying what's up. And then Cliff, OG Cliff, you know what I'm saying? Speaking of Santana.
What's going on, guys? What's going on, guys? Get yourself a little mezcal.
Yeah, but it's funny how things work, because from the moment that Santana, told me that you had, that you were in the liquor business, and then you came by the studio and we had that situation, I was kind of like rapid firing. I was like, well, man, you know, give me the good stuff. And you're like, and you're giving it to me in steps. I want to say you probably had 3 bottles and you were giving it to me in steps. But the thing about it is, I didn't understand your process, which like, man, I give you all the props in the world, because you understand that you're introducing people to a liquor that they may like, but out of respect for the liquor, you're also going to get some education that goes along with it, where beyond you showing the agave fields and the processes of making the agave and all that, I'll say you kind of gave me some one-on-one training about sipping alcohol, period, because you questioned me in a way that I was like, well, okay, why do I like sipping alcohol? Like, we're not talking about getting faded. We're talking about, like, why do you like, what are the tastes? What are the hints? What are the notes? What are you looking for? Like, beyond the quality. And I just really appreciate that, man. It's kind of like, I went from being a self-proclaimed alcohol snob to
a connoisseur.
And no, not a connoisseur, man. I realized I was very ignorant. You know what I'm saying? I didn't, you know, I thought just because you get an añejo, then that's gonna be good. Or just because you get a blanco, it can be okay. And like all these rules, that the rules weren't taught to me. They were rules that I made up in my mind because I wasn't educated. And the only thing that I knew, if I walk into a Bevmo or if I walk into a Costco, you see extra añejo, you see añejo, you see reposado, you see blanco, you see silver. You know what I'm saying? So in my mind, I was like, okay, I appreciate your history and everything that your people are doing for this mezcal, but I need the extra añejo. However you get me there, as fast as you can get me there, I need that extra añejo.
Yeah.
But to my ignorance, I realized you can have a reposado that's just as good as an extra añejo. Like you totally, and I say all that to you, man, to give you your flowers right now, because I thought what I knew how to do was buy an expensive bottle of liquor. That's what I knew how to do. But as far as knowing some liquor, like, I can honestly accredit you to slowing my process down.
Yeah. And let me add to that construct. You know, when we talk about Mexican spirits, for better or for worse, you know, that construct has been created by the industry, right? And for the longest time, tequila has been the big boy in the playground. And they created this construct of blanco, reposado, and añejo, right? Which inherently means to what extent is it aged, but aged in an external container, meaning oak barrels, American or French or whatever, which adds both color and texture and flavor above all, right? In the mezcal world, there are companies that imitate that construct. However, the majority of mezcal is nowhere near that. Rather, they don't care about imitating those European standards. Rather, what we're doing is we're saying we make an agave spirit that is organic, that is small batch, that is about as close as you can to tasting earth and a plant. And we are not going to meddle with that by putting it in oak barrels or French barrels or etc. We're going to just put it in glass and allow its expression, its characteristics, its oil, its viscosity, its aroma, its ripe fruits, its sugar complexity rise, calming the alcohol and becoming its own agave expression, completely free of the idea of reposado or añejo. Most mezcales are always going to be, as you can see here, they're always going to be joven. Joven. That just simply means that they have not been put through an aging process. Once in a while, you'll see madurado en vidrio. That's rare. You got to look at the back. But that just means that it's been aged in glass, which essentially is what all mezcales have been if they're not just coming out of the still and being put onto the client. Most of them are taking at least 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, depending, in the process of making it, bottling it, and then exporting. It takes time. And in that time, you know what's happening? The mezcal is becoming better. Now, what we've done is purposely aged it for 2 years. So the butteriness, the lactic creaminess, all of those elements of the agave are now the primary experience in your palate. We have purposely done it.
So I had an experience about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I went to somewhere that I go to get liquor sometimes, and I wanted to get a really nice tequila. That's what I wanted to get. And I'm having a conversation with the person that's kind of walking me around, and we're having, we're talking about it, and like, once again, this was like one of the greatest gifts ever. What he educated me on is, not only did I confuse tequilas of less quality as being nice tequilas because they were $100 or $200 or $300 or whatever, but he broke down to me that, so he was like, well, why do you like it? Like, okay, so let's have, it was similar to you. He was like, let's have a conversation about it. So I said, well, I like liquor that's very smooth. I like liquor that I can sip. I don't chug. I don't like, there's shooting moments and then there's sipping moments.
Yes.
And what he brought to my forefront, which was like identical to the conversation we had at your house, he said, I think what you're tasting is a lot of synthetic vanilla, and you're on, and then we're going down the different liquors, and he's like, those are synthetic flavors that they put in cheap tequila, and then they throw you a pretty bottle. And I'm like, damn, it is vanilla. I'm like, oh man, I got the okie doke. I bought the bottle, and I bought the extracts that was thrown on top of whatever the liquor was. And I was like, oh man, and what it did, it made me appreciate your simple bottle and high quality.
Yeah, I think that's something that's happening across the board, because two things are happening. The clients, the people buying mezcal are connected to 2 or 3, I think, value systems. And it's not the value system of our grandparents, where we wanted to impress with that gorgeous bottle, right? We wanted to impress with all the ornate things. I think the value system of a lot of spirit drinkers today is the same with food, farm to table. Where's it coming from? How's the animal being treated, right? And in this case, how's the agave being treated? Are you growing your own plants? Are you making sure that you don't over harvest? They're worried about so many other things. Their concerns are about so many other things. And rarely is it the bottle. Don't get me wrong. Nice bottle's a nice bottle. It could be, more than anything, the design. What is your design projecting, right? What kind of paper are you using? Is it like this, that it's actually made from the agave pulp turned into a label? Are you consciously engaging your farmers and making sure that their livelihood is being met, that you're paying them the amount that they deserve as the farmers that are producing this product, right? Or are you an industrial company that perhaps exploits, that has people under long contracts that they did not see coming, right? So the world of spirits is changing, man. And people out there, I think, are really in the right direction. They're willing to work a little harder to buy something. It's the American thing. We don't want to feel guilty about what we buy. We want to be knowledgeable about who we're supporting, right? And we want to believe in the good story. And I think that's a big part of it, Now, to some degree, there's a propaganda of this, and there's a certain social media aspect of it, right? Where people create these stories that they know are going to work for us, are going to pull our strings. But you know what? I still like to think that the average person, if they're not lazy, are going to buy quality products, and they're going to learn a little bit more about the product they're consuming, and they're going to support those people that make products that are, honest, and are intended, to create quality products, and that don't take us away from the key aspect of making money is, hey, make something that tastes good, make something that people want to enjoy. And if you can add to that a great story, doesn't make you feel guilty, and it has creative design, I think all of these elements are being met with today's mezcal industry. And I don't think it's at all about that fancy $200 bottle anymore. As a matter of fact, that's usually a sign that says, run away.
I learned. Yeah, I've definitely been educated. What job is giving you the best life experience?
Has given me or is giving me?
Has or is.
Interesting. That's a great question, man. I am blessed, man. I am so blessed. One of the greatest jobs I've ever had, believe it or not, was at a pawn shop in Boston. Man, every single day I would go in there and I would see people that had stories, and you can only imagine. It was on the outskirts of Dorchester, and every single day, and I learned so much about gold, and I learned about, there's these cats that went to Harvard, and rather than go off and start a business, a major socially acceptable business, these cats started a pawn shop. And when I saw how much money those people made and the knowledge that they used to craft this, I was like, that's pretty cool. And I was a part of that. And there was a guy who was a musician, and he would do his thing with the instruments. There was another guy who was a diamond specialist. And, as a writer, as someone who was making film at that time, I loved it. It was like every day I was part of theater, So for me, the jobs have always been about perspective. What am I learning from it? I've been an educator for 20 years, and every single day I engage young people, and I use a lot of Socratic methods so that I can get them to explain how they see themselves in this world, man. That to me is really rewarding, to be able to connect with young people on that level. But I have to admit, man, this journey here of mezcalero, not too long ago, I found myself in New York. I was in Williamsburg, and I was sitting there in this little brownstone, and I was looking around me, and all these hipsters, man, and some cool vibes, some cool cats. It's New York City. You can imagine, right? There's some collars and some hats that look kind of like this, and some people wearing their Adidas gear, and everybody was there, Asian, white, black, and everybody was sitting there waiting for me to speak, and I just found it really humbling, that this particular passion of mine that I've had now for 10 years has opened so many doors. On a regular basis, I find myself in the farthest depths of LA County. I'll be in Ontario, Whittier, Joshua Tree. Next day, I'll be in Hollywood Hills. Tomorrow evening, I'll be in Venice Beach. And I have, because of this passion, because of this spirit, I have gained access to parts of society and that perhaps I would not have gained access to in any other job. The mezcal world, because I think everybody loves a good spirit, has opened doors for me and has allowed me access to social experiences that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise, including sitting here with you right now.
Oh man, your top 3 favorite types of mezcal.
Oh man, that's tough. I don't want to minimize any of my babies, but I think Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m., the light starting to come down a little bit. I got one of my favorite songs these days, the new Jose James. I'm probably going to drink an Espadin 46. Smooth, floral, bright, easy. It's about 7 p.m. and it's time for dinner. I'm probably going to drink our pechuga, made with fermented pineapple, green apples, plantain, and get this, 1.5 pounds of raw turkey over the still, creating a butteriness, creating a lactic experience that you won't find in any other Muscat.
You said 1/2 pound of what?
Turkey.
Turkey.
Live raw turkey.
Talking about the bird?
The bird. That's the famous pechuga. So essentially, you can take any of the espadin agaves. We take a good espadin, and above the still in the second distillation, you put it right above, you hang it, and as condensation is happening, it's absorbing all those aromas and flavors and oils, both of the fruits and of the chicken bird.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Pechuga. It's one of the most popular ones right now that we have in it's at Bell's, it's at Barkeeper, everywhere. However, when I really, really, really want to just come home and experience magic and recognize the, just the breadth of our work and remind myself why it's all worth it, I got to go with my Amarillo Ancestral, because this one is made in clay pots, just like the one my grandma would use to make her coffee, to make her mole. That clay pot gives mezcales a particular characteristic of increased minerality, more in-depth viscosity, just more oils. Every aroma is heightened. So when you cook, let's say in a stainless steel anything, right? You're gonna get good flavors. But what happens when you're using a Le Creuset, right? Or you're hand muddling thing and you're roasting everything by yourself? That's the ancestral process. So you take the agave and you allow it to express itself in its tuxedo, as I would say, in its best outfit. So yeah, my espadin, my pechuga, and an ancestral Mexicano. Those three are the ones for me.
What's the best advice anybody's ever given you?
I think it's my tia, man, the woman who raised me, my aunt. Sends a little kid. When I was a kid, I was like 7 years old, and she would take me out to work with her. I used to clean houses, and obviously I was a kid. I didn't want to be doing that. And then on the weekends, my uncle and her would take me gardening. They were gardeners, and they would take me to that. And then when we would come home, and we would sit down on the grass, and he would hose me down or whatever, and we'd have fun because it was hard work, right? And we'd relax. And then every once in a while, we'd sit on this little chair outside, and we'd go over the bills. We would go over the cost of living. How much. They would always let me know, this is how much we're spending on food. This is how much we're spending on this and this and this. So that whenever I had like a temper tantrum about anything, especially regarding money, like I wanted these shoes, I remember I wanted these Nikes, and I wanted this bike because I was a kid, right? And you're influenced by the world around you. I would always remember, that I knew in the back of my head that we didn't have enough, right? And who was I to be asking them, right? But they didn't have to tell me. What they taught me without even saying it is, one, live with it within your means, and two, appreciate what you have and be willing to work hard for what you want.
Dang. Yeah, that was I had a similar experience, and it was something that I didn't even understand it until maybe, shoot, man, I want to say maybe around 2014, 2015, and I was talking to the most unlikely person, and I was telling them, I was like, man, I used to think my parents didn't like me. And then he was like, he's like, well, come on, man. Well, why would you say something like that? And I was like, because, on Saturdays, I couldn't watch cartoons. I had to work on rental property. I had to, I was constantly going. I was constantly involved in things. I didn't have, I didn't have much idle time. And then the person I was speaking to, he said, nah, man, your parents were teaching you. You know what I'm saying? They were teaching you. And I was like, damn, I never looked at it like that. You know what I'm saying? I was just like, man, I just knew my friends could kick it on Saturday. They could sleep in. They had cereal. They had cartoons. They had all this stuff. Yeah. But, you know, as I face this cold world that we live in right now, I'm very grateful that I never like to sleep in. And I, you know, and not saying that it's not cool to sleep in. I mean, man, I'll have a lazy day. Don't get me wrong. I believe, you know, you have to slow down sometimes. So I'll have a lazy day. But that's far, you know, out into the stratosphere of like habits of just like kind of just like super chilling out and not, you know, trying to attain a goal and whatnot. Yeah. With that being said, if we were going to give you a biopic, what would be the title? Two Dogs and a Cat? No, I'm just kidding.
You know, it would have to be in Spanish one.
Okay.
I'll explain it to you. One of my heroes, it's this great ranchera singer. You know, he's one of those men that represented, you know, my grandfather's age, and, you know, mustache, sideburn, big mariachi hat, and a soprano voice, right? You know, every song had passion. And one of those songs is called De un rancho a otro. So from one ranch to another is the song. Mm-hmm. And he says in the song, De un rancho a otro está mi destino. De un rancho a otro está mi querer. So what he's saying is that from one ranch to another, there I am following my destiny. There I am finding my love. And I think that phrase, de un rancho a otro, kind of captures or encapsulates my life. You know, I've always been out, you know, from one ranch to another, whether it's a country or a city or particular adventure, always in search of this thing called, you know, destiny, and in search of love and passion.
Dope. And who'd play you?
Man, I have to play myself.
Two Dogs and a Cat? No, I'm just kidding. You know what I'm saying? No, that's right. You can play yourself. If you had to give some advice to your 30-year-old self, what would it be?
I think, you know, looking back on that, yeah, slow down, you know, everything will come at its own time. You know, get out there, you know, go for walks more, just take time, take in this thing called life. Because I think when we're young, especially when we're getting out of those 20s, that anxiety of expectations, you know, the society that we live in, those expectations of success, and, you know, the measurements that we measure ourselves by, right, can be overwhelming. And often when we're that young, we don't appreciate what we have. Right?
Man. Yep, that is the truth. So I'm gonna hit you with the last one, man. So, you know, we just come up out of COVID, and shoot, probably back in it. I've been hearing people left and right catching it. I'm just like,
oh man, I know it's a phenomenon. I mean, I got opinions about it. All right, hit it.
And so coming up out of that and basically having everything, I won't say everything was taken from us. I'll say we had to learn very fast how to live our life very different than anyone had ever. Like, there wasn't a training book, a course. There was nothing. It was kind of like, man, really learning as you move, you know, having to pivot and whatnot. And then with you being an educator, how do you see social progression going in the next 2 years?
You know, I like to think of myself sort of a social, you know, observer, and I'm connected to such varying age levels, you know, age groups. In the morning, I'm hanging out with teens between the ages of 13 and 18, you know. In the evenings, I hang out with a bunch of young people, you know, 20 somethings that are out hustling, you know, in this industry. bartenders, bar managers, you name it. And then I'm lucky enough that I get invited to some really privileged places where, older people that have established themselves, socially and financially. So I see so much diversity in the way that we're approaching, this thing called life and evolution. And one thing that remains constant is this need to fit, this need to be part of something, However, our reaction to that is very diverse. I noticed that many young people no longer believe in the values that we were instilled. The difficulty of becoming a landowner, in real estate in this particular state is very difficult, and many people have dropped that dream. There's almost a sarcasm and a cynicism towards those values, right? Of work hard, the American dream. There's a cynicism towards that. And I think young people, especially young teens, no longer look to us all the time for the answers. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of them negate us, older people, because I think they recognize that we have failed them in many ways, and they're not dumb, man. This social media, this access to internet, this access to information makes them a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And often their reluctance to fit into our established norms and expectations is their silent rebellion to our values. So the future is wide open, man. They're going to create it. And I'm not afraid. I'm just hoping I can just leave a little bit of grain of salt in their heads, that it doesn't have to be so dark, that there is common value that we all have, a need for acceptance, a need for love, and above all, a need for community. I think it's really important to be part of something.
Yeah, man. Tell these disrespectful kids to only knock down every 2 out of 5 older people. You know what I'm saying? Nah, that's what
Man, they're out there. They're not happy with the way things are going, right? But I think that's something that can be said with every generation, man.
Oh, yeah.
Think about how you feel about hip hop right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I can say that I do feel good knowing that there's educators like Santana and yourself out there to connect with some of the youth so that they can just see a different method. You know what I'm saying? A more, I'll say a concerned method, because Santana, he's definitely he's full of love, man. And so he's gonna pour love into something that's gonna allow him to pour love into it. And then with you, I can tell that you care also. So it's kind of like it's just good knowing that the youth, even if they're young adults, they have somebody that they can speak to that's just not gonna create the largest disconnect in the world.
Yeah. Not to get on a rant about education, but we need more people in this profession, but not people that are so overly concerned with establishing their own value system, or highlighting their patriotism or their moral stance on things. We need people in this profession that truly want to help young people explore themselves, that give them the ability to engage in critical thinking, that really have a way of bringing out young people's passions, because we have to remember who we were, right, as young people. And if we would have met that person, right, who probably we were lucky enough that somebody came in, got us by our ears, or pushed us, or put us on that team, or put us in that activity that maybe changed our lives, man. So we need people in this profession, and as a mezcalero, I do the same thing. I'm always educating rather than judging. I'm not the only voice. I'm a voice as part of a greater collective. And I think it's the same thing in teaching. We need people that want to be part of the voice of the greater collective, that don't necessarily want to be the voice.
Well, I can say that from the first time I met you, when you were on Splendid, back when we were in a studio setting, I went from being very impatient and wanting you to get me where I was trying to go with your bottles, and you start me off here and talking about, hold on, we got to go here, then we got to go there, and then we'll get there. I was more like, man, just get me there, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever. But after that interaction, after the presentation, me physically being at one of your tastings, and then me feeling like, man, these sweet, refreshing drinks are cool, but I want the dog. I want to taste the taste. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
To being privileged enough to be in the presence of your home and have you kind of give me like the executive tasting with the conversation of, you know, me not just tasting something because I want an expensive bottle, or me not going by the rules of silver, blanco, reposado, añejo, extra añejo, me throwing all of that out the window, and you having the patience to say, like, what do you like? Like, what do you like to taste? Like, what kind of person are you, like, when it comes to this? You know what I'm saying? And I just really appreciate you having that patience. But yeah, man, I would say you should not to tell you how to do your thing, man, but you got to come down with a dumbed down version. You know what I'm saying? For
the mezcal for dummies. No, man, you know, I think half the fun is when people, whether they recognize it in the moment or not, you know, like yourself, you know, you never know the seed you're gonna plant, you know, and you don't expect for that reward to happen instantly. You know, I think when you do things out of passion, you just do it out of passion. And this is what I do. You know, when I'm not teaching, when I'm not watching films, when I'm not listening to music, I'm selling mezcal. But my sales point is not the average sales point. Mine's about crafting, curating passion for what we do. And I think that if I can instill that in people about what we do, then I've done my job. You know, you'll remember Bishidu, because the person who sells it is passionate about it.
That's dope. So give your social media information out, as well as where someone may be able to have the experience that I had, you know, with you take the long version.
Yes. Well, you know, as a matter of fact, this Saturday at Bell's Beach House in Venice, it's an amazing little restaurant right on the boardwalk, and we are having Bishidu has been invited to close out the pairing series that they have at this restaurant. We're going to be pouring four of our mezcales, and this amazing chef called Sydney Hunter is going to pair our mezcales with some hamachi. I mean, you can imagine, really a great, amazing food. 7 p.m. next Tuesday at Bell's Beach House. And then if you want to go get a bottle, go to Barkeeper LA, right in Silver Lake. They have a couple of three of our expressions. You get the Pechuga that I just showed you guys, the Ancestral, and the Espadin. There, you can take a bottle home. Or if you want to go chill out in LA, Cha-Cha Lounge in Silver Lake, Las Perlas downtown, you can go have a drink. Ask for Bishidu. And then lastly, find us on Instagram, guys. We are Bishidu Mezcal on Instagram. And here's the thing, it's private. So I know you were on here if I see you there tonight.
That's right. Give the spelling of Bishidu, because it does not read the way that it is pronounced.
It is Bixhidu. Bishidu, like a small kiss. If you're French, it's bisou. And if you speak Spanish, besos.
Well, I won't get into the kissing and all that, but I will say that there will be a bottle before Monday of that back in the pantry area of the warehouse. And I'll probably have something here at the house that I can sip on and whatnot. So with that being said, man, this has been another episode of Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV. I appreciate you. Great having conversations about liquor, and I appreciate you having the patience with me to get me where I was trying to go, and to kind of slow down the snobbishness of my XO tasting and whatnot, to break it down to what I really like to taste. You know what I'm saying? Not the bottle, not the lights, camera, action, not all that. So with that being said, thank you, Mr. Javier Ramiro. Matter of fact, we're gonna have to get a Bishi Do to be a. We're gonna have to get you as a sponsor, man. We'll have that conversation.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful night. Bishi
All
Do.
right, man. Thanks.